I'm Kat Bailey, and I'm here at Summer Game Fest Playdays, where I just checked out Metaphor ReFantazio, the new RPG by Studio Zero, the creators of Persona 5. I got a chance to play through about an hour of hands-on time, where I went through 3 separate sections and got to experience a broad swath of this new RPG. The first section was more of a story section where I was introduced to a lot of the different characters and a lot of the world. The second section, I went through a dungeon and got to explore the actual dungeon crawling aspect of the game. And the third section had me exploring the airship a little bit, or maybe it's a land ship, I'm not entirely sure. But you're exploring the land ship, learning how time passes, and then ultimately fighting a boss. So I felt like I got to experience a lot of Metaphor. And if people have played Persona, they're going to recognize this game pretty quickly. The way that the time passes, the way that you boost up your different stats and skills, the way that you make friends with the different party members. The main difference is that instead of hanging out with high schoolers, you're hanging out with animals and girls with tails and things like that, because it's a fantasy world. And that's the big difference between Metaphor ReFantazio and Persona 5, which is that it actually might be a little bit of an isekai. You have a character who is in this world, learning a lot about it. You have a fairy companion, but there are definite references to the real world, and weirdly enough, the monsters are called humans. What's that all about? I have no idea. When you're in the actual battle system, it varies between real-time hack and slash and then actually turn-based command. And when you're in the battles, if you played Persona 5 again, probably going to recognize things like being able to use attacks to inflict weakness upon enemies and things like that. But there are other aspects as well, such as being able to put a character in the front row or the background, being able to team up with other characters via synthesis attacks. There's actually a lot of strategy, and it's clear that they've been thinking a lot about how to improve the actual battle system. Also, another big difference is the way that time passes in this game. In the Persona games, you have a day-by-day calendar, whereas in Metaphor ReFantazio, you will be on an airship and you can go and do an activity, and it's almost like a road trip kind of construct. Actually, it's something that I kind of wish that Final Fantasy or even Starfield had done. It's a little bit like being at a campfire, and I really like this conceit. I think it's really good. Weirdly, if you want a deep cut, Metaphor ReFantazio reminds me of Aura Battler Dumbine, a 1980s anime that's a little bit of an isekai, in which a person falls from 1980s Japan into a fantasy world with giant robots and the same kind of looking fairies. So I'm wondering if they are inspired by that a little bit. So ultimately, I came away from Metaphor ReFantazio with a really strong positive impression, and which doesn't change that much just because I already have a pretty strong impression of it already. It was already my most anticipated RPG of 2024, and low-key one of the most intriguing RPGs of 2024. It's been several years now since we've seen a game from this particular team. They're one of the most talented JRPG developers in the business, and you can really see it in the music, in the art, in the actual presentation. It's really, really, really strong, and I'm really excited to see what else they do with this kind of fantasy genre. You can already see the changes reflected in the music, for example, which is done by the same person who did Persona, but it's more of a high fantasy feel, and I find it quite memorable. It was really standing out to me while I was playing, so I really can't wait to see more. You could check out my hands-on preview over on ign.com, and of course, check out all the rest of our Summer Game Fest coverage and IGN Live as the Summer of Gaming continues.